Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I talk to my guests about their inner side and how their internal changes have led to their outer success stories. We talk about the failures, spirituality, and sometimes the painful experiences that have made them the unique individuals they are today. The main aim of this is for us to learn from them and be inspired by them for our own lives. So, if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, do keep listening. And remember, please, to hit the subscribe on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss an episode. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the founder and Chief Empowerment Officer of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that have put people and planet before profit. In 2015, we became one of the first B Corps in the UK, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I'm absolutely passionate about changing the world for better, and realised many years ago that to do this, we must also change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit has to be mirrored by an inner change. And that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
When things get really rough, I have to be by myself. I'm actually a natural extrovert, but when things are tough, I need to be by myself. And so I schedule in solitude to most weeks, because if I don't get that, I go pop. And the other thing I always joke in the business is I don't think there's many business problems that can't be resolved without a long, good dog walk. So that's my go-to for when things are bad. I get those dogs, the dogs get a lot of exercise. But I get out in nature, I get with the dogs, I walk, and I try and let things settle so that we can see the wood from the trees and how to move forward.
My guest today is Rosie Brown. Rosie joined Frozen Meal company Cook in 2000 and is co-CEO alongside her brother Ed, who founded the business in 1997. Today, Cook is a growing, award-winning food brand employing over 2,000 people, with a belief that healthy relationships are the foundation to happiness in work and life. And I 100% agree with that. They cook meals and puddings in their own production kitchens, using the same techniques and ingredients that a good cook would use at home. They have 113 branded retail stores, 1,500 plus concession partners, and sell online through a growing delivery business. Cook believes in business as a force for good and became a founding UK B Corp in 2013. And Cook has been a top 100 employer for over a decade, and currently holds the number one position in the Sunday Times Best Companies to Work For in the food and drink category. Rosie is passionate at providing opportunities to those with barriers to employment and chairs a national oversight board working across the UK with prisons to support more prison leavers into meaningful work. Rosie, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I normally get a quirky fact or funny story from a guest, not from the guest, but from the people I've talked to before, and I didn't manage to get anything about you. You'd be probably quite pleased to realise. So anyway, we might try and draw that out of you later on. So I normally start by finding a bit about my guest's childhood, upbringing, and all that kind of stuff. So tell me a bit about your early years and what formed you.
Sure. So I grew up with three brothers and parents in Kent. And it was a very kind of full-on busy household. Both my parents worked. They had their own business. So it's actually quite an extraordinary story. Dad was a prep school headmaster and decided with four young children he didn't want to do that anymore. So he, age 40, decided he'd like to go into the coffee business, something completely different. So he left the school, and he went to work for the family coffee business. 6 weeks of commuting later, decided commuting wasn't for him.
So when you say family coffee business, so this was something, was this something his?
Some from my mother's side had a family coffee business. And so 6 weeks of commuting later, he decided that wasn't for him, and then set up a coffee shop in Tunbridge selling coffee beans. This is way before Starbucks or anything.
Yeah.
And it turned out not many people in Tunbridge High Street wanted coffee beans on their own.
Too soon.
It was too soon for that. I think it would still be too soon for that. So he started selling cups of coffee and cakes, and another coffee shop followed. And then they needed cakes for the coffee shops, and they couldn't get them to the quality they wanted, so they started a cake company. So we grew up with sort of entrepreneurialism, business at the family table, and we were always talking sandwich fillings, the real nuts and bolts of how to make a successful business. And so that was just normal. And I think the other thing, so food was really important in the family, and family meal times were non-negotiable, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. And I still run my family like that now. We all meet around the meal table. And Mum would always put, delicious home-cooked, nourishing food on the table, even though she worked, doing various different roles in these businesses. And so sort of food and business was fundamental to kind of our upbringing and our, I think I'm rooted in that. And then the other sort of defining factor, I think, of my upbringing was my parents' faith. So very committed Christians, but very much, I think, lived their faith. So Mum would go to church on a Sunday, and she'd find anyone who was lonely, bereaved, on their own, and she'd bring them back to our family meal table. Because she believed in including people, using food to bring people together. And as teenagers, we were like, "Oh, Mum."
What about your dad? You said your mum went to church. Did he not then?
Yeah, they both did. Okay, but Mum was the guilty one for bringing back the waifs and strays. Yeah. And but I think it was living in sort of those values, and they used to have sort of house churches in our living room, and I thought it was normal that 40 people would come and worship in our living room. I think maybe I realised that's quite an extraordinary experience, actually, and not a normal experience. So faith was very much who they were and how they expressed themselves, both in business and in life and in everything they did. Was it a faith decision to leave teaching and start a business, or was that what? I'm interested to know about that process, because that's quite unusual for people to come out of teaching and go into business. Yeah, no. I mean, I've heard of it the other way around, but not so much that way around. And how old were you at the time that happened? So I was about 7 when that happened. And I just think, Dad had a really strong sense that he'd come to the end of one road and wanted to go down another. Yeah. And you'd have to speak to him about exactly how faith played into that. But I think what I've taken from that, again, is living with a sense of freedom, that actually you don't have to follow the path you've set out on indefinitely until forever. Actually, you can do things until they don't feel right anymore. Yes, and that's, I think, I talk to a lot of people who have finally broken out, but have spent many years of their life being trapped on a certain set of railway lines, as it were, and it's taken it's taken some kind of crisis normally for them to I'm thinking of a solicitor I know who isn't doing law anymore, and it took him a big challenge in order to break away from that pressure from parents, other people. It's difficult, isn't it, sometimes? But I think it's really good that you've grown up with that almost kind of flexibility and freedom, you called it. Yeah. Well, I think it's really important. And I've watched my husband do it. Dom, when the kids got to we'd been juggling, both of us working. And when the kids got to sort of teenage years or, sort of 11, 12, we suddenly felt nannies, and how we were managing it wasn't quite right. And I had an opportunity at Cook, and he said, you know what, I really, really want to be at home with the kids for this next bit, for the teenage years. There was a lot of people saying, if you give up your career, he was doing really well. He was a director, a big corporate. If you do, you know, you'll never go back. Are you sure?
The world's going to cave in. Yeah.
The world's going to cave in. And we held hands and did it anyway. And 5 years later, when the teens are sort of moving on and doing their thing, he's like, actually, I quite want to do something and go back. And he's gone straight back in. And all that fear and nonsense of, you'll never work again, and are you sure? And
fear.
Absolute rubbish.
Yeah, fear is actually the word, isn't it?
So I think I've had really good experiences with both my father, my husband, myself, of making those decisions.
Yeah, I think I did my last paid employed day of work when I was about 24.
Good work.
Yeah, but my dad, I got a phone call from my dad at the time, absolutely outraged.
Right.
He said two things. He said, what about your company car? I'll just get another car.
Yeah.
And what about your superannuation? Well, I didn't even know what that was. I think it's something to do with a pension. So I said, well, you know, whatever. I'm doing it anyway. But yes, I mean, he was very much in that fear mode. So I think it's refreshing, actually, that you had a mum and dad who enabled you to have the freedom to do that. I mean, I've met your mum and dad, actually. I mean, I think the thing that comes across about them, I've only met them a couple of times, but love would be a word that, I mean, your mum sounds a very loving, kind of inclusive, caring person to want to bring nourishment to waifs and strays, as you put it. Would that be one of your kind of family values, would you say? I
think, yes, I think we are completely 100% imperfect. And I think we were not the Waltons. We are still not the Waltons, I can assure you. But I think there was a commitment to love. And that's not always, it's not always easy to live in love, you know, and we're definitely not kind of one of those families that sort of, you know, group hugging each other and high-fiving each other all the time. But I think there is a commitment under all of the kind of bullshit on the top that actually we want to live in love and we want to commit to that.
So what other values would you say that were kind of imparted to you as a child?
Well, I think that one of, I think with faith comes that commitment to love. I think with faith comes that commitment that everybody's got something to offer and something to give. And actually life isn't just about you, it's about what you can contribute to. And I think that's a brilliant value. So I was in prison the other day and I was talking to a guy who was in prison, and he was saying he'd grown up in a family where the value system was basically it was okay to rob from people that were richer than you. And actually you should do it because you were doing everyone a service if you did. Yeah. And that was the value system, and that had ended him up in prison, unsurprisingly. And it had only been in prison through a project that he'd realised that value system wasn't the mainstream, and it wasn't a value system he wanted to live anymore. And you take it for granted, don't you, the value system you do grow up with, but definitely one was what can you contribute as well as what can you take out.
Yeah, I want to come on to the prisons later on, so I won't get sidetracked now, but I used to spend a lot of time in prison, not as a prisoner, same as you, but I've met a guy who seriously saw himself as a modern-day Robin Hood.
Yeah, there's lots of them.
Robbing from the corporates and giving to the poor, which in his case, the poor was his family. I don't think it extended beyond that. But the other thing I want to pick up on that someone I talked to in preparation for this chat is there was a sense with your family, I mean, this could be right or wrong, but you tell me. There's a sense with your family that you were privileged and a sense that you'd been given much, therefore wanted to give back to the world. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, completely. I think, that's that point back to contribute. You don't just take from the world, you contribute back, and actually much has been given. You know, we've had a very blessed life, and actually for me there's an obligation on that to not just sit on that and enjoy it, but to try and put something back.
But that is, I mean, there's lots of people who've had very blessed lives. Most people in the UK, actually, but not everyone sees it that way, do they? That's why, I enjoy taking people to a project we've involved in Kenya, because for many of them, that is the point at which they realise, actually, I'm so lucky to have been, had what I've had, and now's the time for me to give some of it away.
I think where I was lucky is I saw how giving something back actually makes everyone happier.
Yes,
so
including yourself.
Including yourself.
Yeah.
So actually there's no sacrifice in it. No. This is additive to life.
Exactly.
And I grew up learning that was an additive thing rather than a sacrificial thing.
No, I love that. And I talk about that, and that's part of what you're doing with Cook, and we do is almost by making people do volunteering, for example, they, don't want to do that. But actually when they do it, and actually we're paying for their time anyway, but they realise, some of them for the first time, how joyous it is to actually be serving other people and doing stuff for other people.
Completely.
Yeah. The other thing that was an interesting that a friend of yours told me was that humility was in your family DNA. Which is an
I think that's hilarious.
Well,
we try. We try.
Yeah, we can't really say anything more on that, can you? Yeah.
No,
we're all really humble.
I think we try, but I think we have egos like everybody else, and I think life's a constant kind of battle with that, and there are things that humble you along the way for sure.
Well, I don't think. I mean, there's only one of your family I don't know, actually, the other brother,
Alexis.
Yes, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, your two brothers I know, and I would say that is definitely true of them. And I don't think you would have all been able to achieve what you have without some humility.
I agree with that to some extent.
And generosity. I mean, I will say, I felt a bit artificial reading out that introduction because it's a bit formal. But, you have a massively inspiring company, and, we have a lot to be grateful for as a company, just from, with permission, I've nicked a lot of your good ideas and used them ourselves. I hope other people do the same with us. But you're a beacon of light in many ways. Forget the nice awards you've got, but you are a shining light to many businesses across the UK, and we have Cotswold Fair, we have a lot to be thankful for to Cook, so thank you for what you're doing, and we'll come on to a bit more of that later on. So I think there's a wonderful sense of community and generosity of spirit and love, and I think some of that must come from the family that we've talked about. But let's move on a bit. Was school a happy time for you?
School was mixed, broadly happy. I loved boarding school. I boarded for a bit when I was 10 and 11, 12, that sort of age. Loved it. All girls' school for some teenage years. Loved that less. I'd come from a very sort of male family, and I found the all-girls environment tricky to relate to. And then went to a mixed boarding school for sixth form, which I absolutely loved. And many of my best friends today are still from those times. So we've sort of travelled through life together, which is an amazing thing, actually. An incredibly grounding thing as well. Yeah. So, yeah, that's very precious.
And what's the period between sixth form and starting at Cook in the year 2000? What happened in those years?
So I really wanted to be a nurse. Absolutely terrible decision. Okay. Everyone said to me, this is a terrible decision. There's no way in the earth I'm tolerant or nice enough to be a nurse. And so it proved. I didn't do the work. I was arrogant.
Oh, so you were actually a nurse for a while.
I did a nursing degree for a year and a half until I got kicked out.
Oh, for what?
I didn't really want to do it. I didn't go to lectures. Probably a bit of arrogance. I think all of the above. So I went and worked in Westminster for a bit, just as a secretary. I was 19 at that point, and I had no money coming in. My mum and dad were like, well, you're on your own, which I think was fair enough. And so I went and started as a secretary, photocopying, and then I moved to the banks. I went to Societe Generale and then Morgan Stanley. And from there, I'd sort of worked my way up a little bit by this point. And I was at Morgan Stanley when Ed and James called me and they said, come and work with us. And I said, I know nothing about business. And they were like, well, neither do we.
That's the humility kicking in again.
So I was like, okay then. 2000, off I trotted. There's about 3 cook shops at the time, I think.
Was that a no-brainer, that decision?
Yes, again, it felt right. I mean, I took a big pay cut to do it, but it felt right. I had nothing to lose. I was unmarried without kids. Did it. And again, lots of people saying, are you mad? You're leaving London to go work in Kent. You're not even married. You're in your 20s. You should be having fun. And just feeling like I'd had quite a lot of fun from the ages of about 16 to 22 already. And maybe actually being in Kent would be a good thing.
So how old were you when, this is, well, I'm going to give your age away here, but how old were you when Cook started?
Oh, I'm not good
1997, wasn't it?
Yes, so 22.
Okay. So, and was there a sense from the rest of you in the family, this was obviously going to work, or was there a sense of, well, I wonder what Ed and Dale are doing starting Cook? This sounds completely mad. Where was it?
To be honest, I was sort of 20, 21 and very consumed with my own life, as you are, age 20, 21. And I always had absolute faith in Ed. And so I was just like, how great, go for it, do your thing. But really, I was mostly preoccupied with what I was doing. So I wasn't overly concerned about what was going on over there. But I did, occasionally Ed would, needed to go to weddings or things, and I would go and work in the Farnham shop on a Saturday to cover for him and things. So it was always part of life. But yeah, I think age 20, I was more concerned with. Okay,
that's an honest answer. So when you started there in 2000, what were you doing?
So I'd gone to set up an HR department because at the time the Handmade Cake Company employed around 100 people and there was no real sort of contracts or it was all very informal and there needed to be a bit more structure as we were growing up. So I went in to do that.
And why did you didn't know anything about HR?
I knew nothing. I literally did everything on Google. I still do.
Okay, right. And that was just because there was a need there, you did it? Or you were worried about them doing something illegal?
No. That's what I was asked to do. And I went and learnt about HR and I put in contracts of employment and job descriptions and got some of the basics up and running. And, actually from there sparked a real love of the industry and people and... we no longer have HR in Cook, human resources. We call it the people team. Yeah. I'm not really convinced about
much better name.
Business having resources particularly.
No, exactly.
There it began, I suppose.
And how many were there in the company at the time?
Oh, not many. 100, 150.
Okay. I think sometimes the wrong type of HR can just be a bureaucratic barrier to things happening, but obviously it's not the way you do it, because that's the life that's in Cook, isn't it? It's all about the people, and that shines through really strongly. So, I mean, now you would probably say the kind of people side of business is your purpose. Would you say that? Kind of purpose in life. If I was to ask you what that was, what would you say?
Yeah, I think it's definitely people, very people focused. So I haven't articulated what my personal purpose is. I think it evolves and changes, and but I think what the core that's running through everything that I do and I care about and where my energy is people. So it started with, how do we create a really healthy environment for people to thrive at Cook, and what does that look like, and then how do we go about creating that and building that, and then how do we from there build a sort of purposeful, impactful culture where people are empowered and enabled to do good themselves. So actually our culture spreads beyond just our own walls out into the community. And obviously my work with prisons, and I think I have a very deep belief and faith in people.
So talk to me about the prisons. What percentage of your workers are coming from prison?
So we have a raw talent programme which supports people with barriers to employment back into work. And that's currently about 5% of our workforce, sort of nearer 10% in our kitchens and operation, which is where the bulk of the programme operates. And of those, at any one time, the number coming from prison will fluctuate. I'm also very sure there are a lot of people who have been in prison that are not on our raw talent programme as well.
You don't know about.
I don't know. And that's fine by me. So yes. And
so I don't know where this fits in, but someone told me about a trip to India with your dad that was quite formative for you.
Well, my dad said, let's go on a one-to-one trip to Paris. And I said, how lovely. And then he went to church and met his friend from India, who's actually a guy called Andy Matheson, who's been a mentor to me, been an amazing guy, does leadership development at Cook, but he works with a charity in India. And we went and saw his work out there. And one of the things he works with is trafficked people, and particularly women and girls. And he took me into a Mumbai brothel. And I think it was the single darkest experience of my life, and gave me a really tangible kind of sense of what despair looks and feels like. There were people so disconnected from themselves, from each other, from society. And even when the charity was going in and reaching out to help, the trust was so low that the help couldn't be taken. And I think that just showed me, it was at a time where I was quite hopey-changey about people.
Right.
And I think it showed me what despair looks like and the reality of despair. And again, that's something I've learned in prisons and with raw talent. And I think it makes me more determined, because I feel like I've been in a really privileged position where I've seen the very best when cultures are working and people are thriving and growing as human beings and being brilliant. And I've also seen what happens when people hit their lowest ebb and despair sets in, and what we create when that happens. And I'm really interested in that not happening.
Yeah. The people whereas despair is there, I mean, it must be harder to integrate them into your team than the ones who are a bit more hopeful. So do you have any kind of rules around how you recruit people from those situations? Are there some people that, well, actually, no, we can't deal with that at the moment, or would you take anyone on?
Yeah, and I'm very protective of our team as well. You know, we've got safeguarding in place for them, because what you can't do is give them things that are beyond our own expertise or levels of competence, because I think it would be pretty unwise. So we do have recruitment. We need to assess that there's a basic readiness to work. And with that comes, enough optimism and hope that people want to be part of what we're doing, certainly. So, and we've got plenty of signposting in place for where there's despair.
I mean, I know from my stuff I've done in prisons that probably 90% of people I used to go and see drugs are there somewhere. Do you drug test people when they come and work for you? How does that work?
We don't drug test people, but we do work very closely with partners. So we learned a long time ago that Cook, on our own, trying to work with people with often complex histories on their own doesn't work so well. When we have Cook plus the charity partner, so we're doing the job and the support.
Yeah.
When we have a charity partner to do some of the accommodation, addiction stuff, and then the individual who's committed, we can make really good progress together. But we need all of us.
Yeah.
And again, that's part of the humility point. I think there was a time I thought Cook can do it, Cook can change the world, Cook can, and we couldn't. We can only do one small part of it, and we need to work with others to really make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's wise advice. And some of the stuff we do with neurodiversity, we've got a charity alongside too, which does make it a lot easier, doesn't it? Well, I want to talk about you a bit more and the kind of personal change side of things. So I'm a great believer that we are all. Well, we were all probably started off being a human doing, then started to learn how to be a human being, and probably now I'm a human becoming. Because I think people who are the people I want to work with and spend time with are people who are changing and becoming something better. And I know you're like that. So how would you describe your kind of personal change over the last few years?
Oh, that's one heck of a question. I think it's a constant process of evolution, isn't it? I've had many moments, I think, where I have met my ego, and I think it's in those moments where change happens. So, I think very early on, sort of at the beginning, there was I really wanted to make Cook a better place to work, and I was on this mission, and how are we going to do it? And I was like, what we need is clear career paths, and we need a kitchen development scheme, and I worked really hard on it, and I put it up, and I was like, isn't this amazing? And then we did the survey, and we bombed, and we didn't do very well at all. And all that work hadn't changed anything. And, I go into the kitchen, this is great. What's going on? And of course, no one wanted a kitchen development scheme. What people wanted was to leave their shift on time, and they wanted gloves that kept hands warm. And I had just and that it was a real moment for me of I was well intentioned, and I so thought I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. Because
in my own head, I knew what people wanted, and it was a moment where I kind of had to really face into the fact I didn't know very much at all, and I was going to have to ask people and give people what they wanted rather than be everyone's saviour, I think. So, and that really informed how I've operated since then, which has been, don't assume you know what everyone wants and give them great stuff, because it didn't work.
No. Yes. No, I can think of similar times I've had.
And I think I've had a few moments like that, and I think one of the most formative was probably about 10 years ago when I was feeling really wronged about something, and I was feeling really fed up with someone, and I went to the first coaching session. We were talking about something completely different, but this kept popping up. Anyway, in the third coaching session, the coach said to me, "You're really resentful about that." And I said, "Me? Resentful? I'm not resentful. I'm a really nice person. I'm great. I've been wronged. But listen to what they've done. Listen, and then you'll understand." And it doesn't matter. Absolutely doesn't matter. It's you who's holding the resentment. And you can carry on if you want. And I'll never forget that moment, because I went home in the blackest mood, and it was like flipping Star Wars going on inside me, and you're like wrestling. And I was like, I really wanted to hold on to my ego and say, no, I've been wronged, and I'm gonna, I need an apology before I can move on, or I get to just let go and crack on. And it was a wrestle for 2 days, and I'll never forget it. But I feel like I went through a portal. Of proper accountability at that moment.
And sometimes when we do that. I mean, I don't need to know what happened in this case, but quite often, in my experience, that then releases the other person to do something as well.
Of course.
I don't know how that works.
I don't know how it works either.
No.
There's something about energy. I don't know. It's more than I can understand. But so it's those moments, I think, that it's just constant, isn't it? And you get stuff wrong, all the time. And I keep learning.
Do you ever get depressed?
I don't suffer from depression. I can get black moods when I can't see a way through. But they don't tend to last long, thankfully. So no, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm a depressive
but I mean,
person.
there must be times when you're worried about aspects of the business and your role, and how do you deal with that? Because I'm asking this because, particularly with a company as successful as Cook, a lot of people look in from the outside and everything's a bed of roses, Rosie, pardon the pun, but Rosie's skipping along to work every day with a smile on her face, but I obviously know it's not always like that.
Oh, so, it's a daily struggle.
Yeah,
it's a daily struggle. There's always something. I've got a lot of things that keep me sane. When things get really rough, I have to be by myself. I'm actually a natural extrovert, but when things are tough, I need to be by myself. And so I schedule in solitude to most weeks, because if I don't get that, I go pop. And the other thing I always joke in the business is I don't think there's many business problems that can't be resolved without a long, good dog walk. So that's my go-to for when things are bad. I'm like, I get those dogs, the dogs get a lot of exercise. But I get out in nature, I get with the dogs, I walk, and I try and let things settle so that we can see the wood from the trees and how to move forward.
Yeah, I think this is really important, and you know that solitude is a chapter in this book which we'll talk about later. But again, you tell me, you probably meet more leaders and CEOs than I do, but I don't think enough of them spend enough time on their own. Would you say? I mean, maybe things are changing, but the whole culture of being a CEO was productivity and activity, and it's like a god almost, that you can't be seen to be doing nothing because you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's an internal, I don't know if you still have that. I sometimes get that still, despite having changed quite a lot. But if I'm not doing something productive, it's a waste of time, is a thing in my ear sometimes. I know it's not, but do you get that? Or?
I absolutely get that. And I think there is a prevailing culture, and I think there are some people who'll think, well, what's she doing this afternoon? And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That's the joy of being 50. That's okay, because I know that's what I need, and I know that's how I'm going to, help lead this business better. But it's a challenge, I think. We get lost in the tasks and the to-do
think you were on
list.
holiday again or something.
Yeah. No.
I used to get that in the days when everyone was in the office every day, which isn't the case anymore. But if I was doing something else out of the office, I'd be on a holiday. And no, I've just been working somewhere else,
Yeah.
I want to talk about your spirituality, whatever that word means for you. You can say what you like on that. But obviously you came from a background of faith, Christianity. Is that, where are you at on all that now?
When I was about 16, I moved away from what I would call a kind of traditional church, a regular attendance, and I turned my back on it, really. I went and partied. And since I've had kids in my sort of early 30s, I've been gently re-exploring and reconnecting with faith. But it means, and I'm still exploring that. As the truth. I don't have a definitive answer. This is what I believe and this is what I do. I don't go to church regularly, although I always mean to. I read a lot. I read a lot of faith books. I have a daily blog that I really enjoy that's faith-based. I struggle with the Church of England like a lot of people. So I think faith means to me holding on to. I talk about God. I believe in God, but God, whatever you perceive him to be, for me is love. So I really believe passionately in a commitment to love and all the difficult stuff that comes with that. And I really have a deep faith in people, and who each of us can be, I think. And like you, I think spirituality is, am I connected to myself? Am I being honest with myself? Am I connected to the world around me? Am I connected to others, my family? And so it's an ongoing exploration for me. I'm really curious about faith. I'm really curious about it. The Life of Pi changed my life. So,
oh wow! What, the book or the film?
Both.
All right.
So I'd grown up with there is only one route, and it's this route. And I'd never been able to quite reconcile my own beliefs with one route. And the Life of Pi opened that up for me. Okay. And it said, actually, there are many routes. It might be okay that there are many routes. And so I've got quite a multi-faith, broad view.
Yeah.
And I think there are great teachings and learnings in all of the great faiths, actually. So
I agree. I mean, I think when you've connected with other people who are Buddhists, Muslim, Hindus, on a really deep level, you can't be narrow-minded and dogmatic anymore.
Well, that's that. I've worked with people. I've got great friends. I agree. So I'm still exploring. I'm still exploring what faith means for me. It's deep and it informs how I live my life. I know that much.
I heard actually one of your favourite authors was also one of mine, Richard Rohr.
Oh, I love Richard Rohr. Yeah.
So he's, just for those who haven't heard of him, which are probably most people listening, he's Franciscan monk, isn't he?
Yeah.
Based in the States. But what you said about faith as being love and an all-embracing love for all people everywhere in the world is very strong throughout his writing. I don't know if you've read, I can't remember the name of the book now, but he's written a brilliant book on the midlife transformation. Have you read that one?
So falling up or
falling
upwards.
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's such a good book. If you wanna learn about transforming in the midlife, which we talked about quite a bit with Eleanor a few episodes ago. That's a wonderful, wonderful book. So do you have, apart from the dog walking and nature, do you have any kind of regular, what I call them, spiritual practices or just practices that you do?
So I journal.
Yeah.
So I write down what I'm learning, which sounds terribly pompous, doesn't it? But it helps me to. Yeah. For me, when I write it down, it helps me articulate what I actually think.
Yes.
Because I'll write something down, I'm like, oh no, I don't think that. That's rubbish. But then I'll on the second or third iteration, I'll be like, that's what I do think. So it helps me really understand what I believe and what I think. So I journal a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's quite a few people I know who've intended, and they may have it as a resolution for 2026 to journal. But I've also heard from them that I did it for a few days, then I stopped. How would you, someone who wants to do that, and how would you encourage them to kind of do it and get into it and keep it as a regular practice? Because I do that and I've found it really helpful too.
So I have beautiful notebooks, because I think beautiful notebooks are really important for journaling. So I have beautiful notebooks, and I always have one on the go on my desk at home, and I don't put rules around it. I don't write every day.
No.
But probably twice a week I'll jot something down, and then occasionally I'll sort of get a burst of energy and I'll really write a lot at a weekend or something. But I don't have rules. It's just it's something I've done. I kept a diary religiously throughout my teenage years, dropped off in my 20s, and then since 30s I've been doing this more informal style. So I've got notebooks and notebooks and notebooks.
And do you go back to them and previous times, or is it just the writing process?
It's really the writing. Yeah. It's mostly the writing and reflection. The ability to just reflect, I think, for me is really important, rather than just moving on. Because I'm very much a let's move on person. Let's get the job done. Let's move on. What's on the to-do list? And actually, that pause of going, that went a bit wrong. What have I learned? Or that went really right. What have I learned? Or what's going on?
I don't quite know how that works, but I think you're right. I think because the writing, you can write slower than you think. So I think it's because it slows down the thinking. Yeah. Is this how it works? Probably. So it makes you reflect more about what you're thinking just by writing it down. I think that's probably why it's a good thing to do.
No, it's good. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, and usually I write when I get an insight, and that insight rarely comes, it's often when I'm in the shower, walking the dogs, driving a car, I'll go, I'll see something fresh and new, and that's the stuff I try and write down.
Well, I was going to talk to you actually about intuition, because I'm feeling that the need to talk about this more in 2026, actually, because most businesses don't use intuition enough. Generally, not exclusive rule, but generally, women leaders are better at using that as a business tool, if you like, than the men are. There's still too many men who are CEOs and not enough women. So talk to me about intuition and how that impacted your business decisions, and how do you balance that with the kind of spreadsheet side of thinking? Yeah,
I think it's an ongoing challenge. I'm naturally, intuition, I would say, would naturally, in my kind of personality profile, should be a strength. You have to ask other people not whether it actually is, but I'm definitely on that side, and I definitely, but I think intuition on its own can be a bit dangerous. So it's about making sure you've got the data and enough feedback loops from other people, because I think, intuition can come from ego.
Yes.
Or it can, genuinely come from what you're sensing. And you have to really make sure, if you're going to operate on intuition, you know where it's coming from, because it can go quite wrong otherwise. But I think it's so important, intuition, because I think we can't run businesses on spreadsheets, but it's joyless for everybody. And we need that sense of where is the energy, where needs a bit of focus. And that does come from intuition, I think. It's about energy, intuition.
Yes. And on your leadership teams, probably a few of them, are there other people in the room that are more spreadsheet orientated and those who are less, and people who are more? Presumably that works as a balance between the different people in the room, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you want a balance, don't you? I think, and certainly when Cook was young, we were highly intuitive, and that was very successful, and I think that can work very well.
It can if you want to move fast. I think sometimes the spreadsheets slow you down too much.
It can, but I think as we're growing up, we absolutely need both. For me, it's that kind of blend of art and science. You want both.
So what's next? How do you think you will change in terms of what you're doing in the next 5 years?
I think that's a really interesting question, and I don't have the answer to that. I think what I'm committed to do is moving forward with my values, keeping practicing and, faith and growth, and trusting that it will take me in the right direction. I've never had a plan. I never wanted to be a CEO. I've never gone, that's what I'm trying to achieve, ever. And I've always just waited for the next thing to arrive or appear, as the prison work did, as Cook did, and I will wait and see what's in store. So I don't have a plan, but it's to navigate this bit. I'm in midlife, navigate this and just stay true to my roots and my values as I walk through this bit of midlife, and see what happens, I think.
And one thing I was meant to ask you earlier, which I forgot, but there is a bit of pressure in other people I've talked to from the B Corp community that some of them are dialing back a bit on the radical people and planet stuff, and probably trusting too much in the spreadsheets, actually. But how do you, in terms of that balance as a leader of a big company like Cook, how do you get that balance right? Or is it a balance? Is it putting people and planet first and then trusting the profits follow? Which way round is it?
I feel wholly committed to the idea of business as a force for good. And I feel wholly committed that we have to do business that honours people and planet. And that's a non-negotiable for me. And if we can't do that at Cook, then I certainly don't particularly want to be there, because for me, it's about living in alignment. So I think we are absolutely committed to it. And I think as we move forward, I'm less interested in what the spreadsheets say. You know, I think there are important measures like carbon and what have you that we need to know what's happening. I'm much more interested in, is the company living in alignment with our values? Are we being true to our word? Are we having an impact? Are we understanding our impact? So, you know, I see no scaling back. I would hope as we move forward and we grow, we can scale up. That's certainly the ambition.
Hope that too, but there's a bit of noise from, there's actually a couple of our suppliers that were B Corps have said, no, not doing it anymore, which I find quite sad, really. I mean, it's not that B Corp has ever been the answer to everything, but certainly for us, I'm sure for you too, it's a fantastic springboard into being better, and not just having a better company, but producing happier, more fulfilled employees. And we are happier and more fulfilled doing it ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we remain completely committed. So
good. I'm glad you said that. I think it's important that it needs saying, because as you know, there's been too many negative articles about B Corps in the press in the last year or so. So we're coming towards the end of our time, and there's some questions I ask all my guests, which we will continue to do for the time being. So one is a piece of advice you wish you'd had when starting out that actually no one ever gave you, and you've since discovered it yourself.
For me, I have a postcard above my desk at home which says, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I wish someone had told me when I was younger that not everyone knows what they're doing. I think you look at your peers and you think everyone knows what they're doing, and you look at your bosses or people senior to you and you think they know everything and I know nothing. And I think we are all really figuring it out. When the penny dropped at some point in my 30s that I didn't need to ask for permission and I just needed to crack on, that was game changing for me. So I think it's very empowering when you realise no one knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, so it's back to what we were talking about earlier. I mean, it's like being a parent, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, we're all figuring it out.
No parent knows what they're doing
exactly
until they do it.
Yeah.
And that's why we make so many mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, tell me about those. That's a whole different podcast.
Well, there is a good podcast, Elizabeth Day, How to Fail.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I love that, because it's the failures that make us, isn't it?
Of course.
Have you failed?
Oh, how many times have I failed? Count the ways in which I failed. I mean, yes, I've failed so many times at so many different things on so many different occasions. And I think those are the learning points, aren't they?
Definitely, yeah. And a piece of advice you did have, but you've chosen to ignore because you realised it was rubbish.
So I think I think I'd probably say the whole be professional shtick. So when I was setting up HR, it's you can't have family at work, it's team, and you can't have friendships at work, it's dangerous, and absolute rubbish. I really believe in community at work, and I love it when we've got 3 generations of families working in the business. I love it when people get together and end up having babies. I love it when people are best friends at work. I'm like, bring your humanity to work and let's have rich, rewarding relationships with each other. So I hate all that be professional shtick.
Yeah, amen to that. I married someone that worked for me, so I couldn't ever say that, could I? But first time I met her was at the first interview. And from my book, The Fourth Bottom Line, which is about 50 different characteristics of good leadership, is there one chapter that particularly resonates with you at the moment?
I think I would always start with self-awareness, because I think that therein lies the key to everything. So for me, but the thing I'm actually actively working on this year is joy. I didn't love last year, and I can get very caught up in to-do lists, what needs to be done, the struggles, the stresses, and I think last year I didn't enjoy the journey enough. And I think as a leader, if you're not enjoying the journey, possibly other people aren't either. And so I've sort of made a mental note this year for more joy. And I said to someone, how do I find more joy? Where can I find joy? And they just said, well, you need to look for it more. So I've sort of made a commitment to myself to look for joy more. And write it down when you find it or see it. And so I will report back in 3 months or 6 months as to whether I feel more joyful. But
you're the first person that's ever chosen that one, actually.
Consciously.
So what's the difference between joy and happiness, would you say?
I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I think joy comes from thank God. I think joy comes from somewhere quite deep, and I'd like more of it in my life. I think why wouldn't we? And I think if we can find it, and the people that do have it can ripple out such light to other people. And in leadership, what better gift is there for others than to ripple out that light and bring light and bring that lightness? So, for me, a little less of the doing and a little bit more joy.
Well, I talked to a couple of people that work with you, and they said that you do that anyway, but obviously we can always do more of it. So thank you for all you do. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope that joy fills 2026 for you, Rosie.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, and I loved your book, so thank you.
Thank you. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and do leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website, paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thanks so much for listening.